We're really excited to get things kicked off for our March webinar, and we've got some great guests, panelists that we're going to be introducing everybody here to. Right now, you should all be seeing our onboard screen that we use for our webinars and our coffee hours that we're going to be speaking a little bit about towards the end of this session. So today's topic is, we've got a panel of 3 customers that we've been working with, some CEOs and board members. They're going to be talking about OnBoard from their perspective. So we're really excited to be able to do that. To get started, we've got a presentation here in OnBoard. So I'm going to open the book, get our presentation slides up on the screen, and then we'll do some introductions to our panelists. So one of the first things that we want to do is just review with you guys some of the questions that we've prepared and that our panelists are looking forward to commenting on, and want to encourage you guys to please chime in with any questions, because this is all for you. We know that we have groups that are maybe in different stages of implementation or having been a customer of OnBoard. So this is your opportunity to ask questions. So we'll be wanting to hear, how has OnBoard helped these different organizations overcome any of their business challenges compared to what they were doing prior to coming to OnBoard, adoption and engagement, getting everybody 100% on board, no pun intended. Sometimes can be a challenge, so we'll hear what tips they've had and their experiences, what they do now pre-meeting as compared to what they used to do, different efficiencies that have helped them get more time back to their day to maybe contribute more to their mission, the mission of the organization, even maybe bring in new agenda items that they wouldn't have had time for necessarily, that now that they can do more work in between meetings. So those strategic objectives. And then, transitioning from paper or from email PDFs to a full board portal solution, is a change. And so we would like to hear about how OnBoard has assisted in general with the culture and the view of technology within organizations. And then if there's some thoughts on how these groups might be using OnBoard more in the future.
This is Peter Vercillo. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Peter, how you doing?
Thanks for saving us, Peter. Well, maybe we'll get started with you and make sure that we can get other people on as well. Okay. Well, Peter, I'm going to go ahead and move over to your slide and let Brian do a quick introduction, and we'll have you maybe answer a couple questions while we're working out with Dr. Potter and Mr. Padak.
So what happened when you actually went to click on me, I actually cut out and then came back in. So just so you know.
Okay, well that's good. As long as you can hear us now, we can certainly hear you. So I want to thank you, Peter. We've talked before a couple times. I want to thank you for attending today and taking the time to review us. I think you have a really unique story about bringing your board on, well, not to be punny, but on board with us. Tell us a little bit about your experience with OnBoard. We'll start with question number 1. In your example, how do you think OnBoard has helped your organization overcome their challenges that you had before this? I know you and I talked. You guys were a paper-heavy environment.
Yeah, we had 10 meetings on top of it, 10 board meetings. So I had the worst of both worlds. And then on top of it, I really didn't understand corporate governance at all. I had been promoted down from a couple levels, so it wasn't like I was actively engaged or experienced in board corporate governance. So I came from a very humble beginnings, and I was basically thrown into the fire. And then I had actually gone to a trade association's corporate governance boot camp, they call it. And it was very helpful to see what is really going on out there. And I realized that we had, there was a lot of labor-intensive, logistic-intensive, paper-intensive processes just to get, drafts out to people and then just to communicate, documents. And many of those documents were really not reader friendly, I would say. And so we've come from that point to within a year of testing OnBoard with our board members who were very up there in age. We now have gone to a quarterly format with committee structures and charters. We've also gone to a paperless system using OnBoard. And you can see we've actually taken on 3 new board members over the last year. So we've had a lot of transition. And to be honest with you, they couldn't be happier and I couldn't be happier with the process. I really thought it was going to take several years to get everyone on board. And my partner in crime is Janet Johnson, our assistant controller, who's helped immensely in getting some of the documents out and up on the system and doing some of the archiving and things of that nature. And just yesterday or today we had committee meetings and she's like, don't do that.
So Ed, are you with us too? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. This is Ed Potter.
Hi,
Downey. Hi, Jenny. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining us. Sorry we're having some technical difficulties, but the important thing is you're here. So, Peter, I'm going to thank you for that, sharing some of that information about, getting on board and being able to move along quicker than you thought.
Yeah.
Dr. Potter and I, worked with Downey Federal Credit Union and Yvonne and Ray there, the CEO, and they're still kind of going through some early implementation and been working on their meetings after doing some orientation. So Dr. Potter, I know, tell us a little bit about your history with Downey Federal Credit Union. And I know you shared a little bit about your longstanding history and not maybe being the most tech savvy person, which is fine. I think it's great for everybody to hear from your perspective, what you think about OnBoard so far.
Well, they talk about being a little bit older. I'm the 80-year-old right now and have been on the board for 19 years. And I got appointed to the board because the Downey Federal Credit Union was initially the teachers' credit union, and I was the assistant superintendent there. So we did a hostile takeover. The board was struggling. They had 4 old ladies from the adult school who didn't know much about it and got in a battle with the lady CEO. And superintendent said, I want you to run for the board. And I said, I know nothing about credit unions. And he said, they don't either. The bottom line, we won. Since I had hired the vast majority of the 1,000 teachers in Downey, so easy to get the 40 votes I needed. So anyway, as soon as we had our first board meeting, all the old ladies from retirement, who I was their boss, had resigned. So there were 3 of us on the board. I'm the new chairman, my buddy's vice chairman, and the one gal is the treasurer. And then we appointed 4 quality people, head of the hospital emergency room, an attorney, a CPA, and another one. And so we were struggling at $39 million in those days. And today we're just hitting about $240 million. So it has been a good move. Bottom line, I think I was typical of many of the board members. I'm the oldest, but there are some that are getting close to me. We were kind of talking about, computers, et cetera, several years ago. And an iPad was kind of a new idea, but it took us 3 years to get them, by the way. And then in looking at how to compare with all of this, OnBoard seemed to be the right people. And I will say this. Now we've only had about 2 or 3 meetings with OnBoard, but it has totally changed what we do in the credit union. For example, we never start a board meeting now. The president is not allowed to start until all of our computers are turned on and ready to go. That's a big impact to start with.
Yeah.
And the thing that I like best about it is we used to have over 100 pages on our board packet that had to be typed and duplicated and mailed, and it was a pain to look at. Now with the new OnBoard, you're sitting in a meeting and you say, let's turn to page 72. You push on the little magnifying glass and punch 72 and you're there.
Right.
And if the print looks a little narrow, you take your fingers and spread it out and it gets big. And at 80 years old, I want it to be bigger than some of the others. It's a brilliant thing. It's changed our lives on the board. We're thrilled to death. And the nice thing is we can get information from Yvonne and the CEO during the month, before we have our meetings, and to keep us up to date. Or he'll say, there's something I need you to look at real quick. We might have to have a vote just online, and we can do that, stuff that we were never able to do before.
That's
to think
awesome.
that this has changed us, I'm telling you, I am the world's best supporter, and I am the least qualified on computers in the entire board. So trust me, I was the hardest one. I told Jenny, I really am not the right one to be on this committee. She said, yes, you are. So here I am, 80 years and all. I love OnBoard. And Jenny, you are wonderful.
Oh, well, thanks, Dr. Potter. And, I think we want all different, all different board members. You have a lot of great experience with being on the board. And so you have those years of going through, coming to the meetings, getting the packets, the days of, lugging around paper and things like that. So, that kind of also plays to the technology adoption, right? So as as organizations move more into the electronic phase, I know you're going to be around on the board, Dr. Potter, but as you guys look to even, get fresh blood on the board and get new backgrounds and experiences, technology is important for a lot of boards and attracting new board members. So we hope that OnBoard helps with that. And
we have a supervisory committee, 7 board members, and in supervisory committee, they actually check with the credit union. They can go in, they hire, they basically go in and check the money in the drawers. They go into the vaults. They hire the people that evaluate us and so on. So I insisted that they also be in every board meeting, and they are 100% up to date with everything the board does. And when I die at 80, that time will be coming. Immediately, one of the supervisory committee members is 100% current on everything we're doing.
Right.
And one of those will automatically be chosen by the board. And the nice thing is the supervisory committee members are all appointed by the board. They don't run, they're appointed. And they are a much younger group, and they're really technically wise. I've learned the secret. One of the youngest members sits right beside me, and when I have any questions about OnBoard, she says, touch this little button, and it will change your life.
Yeah.
So, and we really appreciate it.
I love that. Yeah. Well, we're super excited that, OnBoard allows people to get up to speed quickly, and that way they can move into these important positions, as things change and move around. So I'm going to see if Dr. Potter, have you kind of hang on with us, and feel free to interject. We've got a few other questions we'd love to get some input on. I think Frank is on his cell phone, and we're trying to work on the audio there. Peter, I might ask, unless Frank, can you hear, or are you able to? So we'll keep working with okay. So Peter, maybe while I'm working on that, we can still have you kind of come back in and share. Has there been any changes in the meeting itself in terms of the way that you structure your agenda, by maybe being able to do things in between meetings now, or?
Well, what we've done outside of OnBoard is because of we have this thing called CGAD, that is the Corporate Governance Annual Disclosure, and that's going to be the governing body of accountability of especially with mutual insurance companies, making sure that policyholders are protected. So we actually have gone to a committee, more formal committee structure in a quarterly meeting. We've issued iPads to each board member, And we did a year of testing the process and, while also providing paper, but that quickly diminished. They really, I mean, we have a very aged board, and they were maybe one person was, unable to make that transition, and they've since retired. So I think that how it's contributed to maybe strategic objectives is it's made the board book, I think, a little more user-friendly in the data that we can present. And it's easy to follow as far as the way that you can just, follow along and scroll as the meeting progresses. And even those, I think Frank is 85 and he came in today, signed in, and just follows it, as he scrolls through the contents of the board. So I think it's been just an improvement. Selfishly, it's helped Janet and I, get things out a lot easier. But I think the board has also helped give them even more information that whether you're looking for a support document or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. I know, Peter, you and I have talked, this is Brian, by the way, you and I have talked occasionally about, your long-term vision for the insurance group and how sometimes it's not the most easy to change industry, which I'm sure a lot of our fellows in other realms, financial and whatnot, can kind of concur with you. Everybody thinks theirs is the hardest to change. But
the term I used was pale, stale, and male.
Yes.
Well, you call it as it is, right? Yeah, but that doesn't mean it can't change management.
Yeah.
Lovely concept.
But but I think, you've had these, this was a strategic goal for you to put OnBoard in place, and you were able to implement that. I know you said much faster than you were expecting to get the board to adopt. Do you see this being a tool that then you can use to drive other goals moving forward?
I don't know. I think it's helping. Like we had just today, we had a investment committee, and we had a comp and personnel committee, and just having the ability to digitally transmit and share documents, some of them pretty large, that they can review those pretty easily at home. And even during the meeting, scrolling through, I think the one investment committee document is 60 pages, and it's easy to go to page 12. You scroll right down. It's just much easier than having a 100-page document that you're trying to find, a page 12. And so I think it's facilitated just better communication all around.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
This is Janet. I was just going to add also with security of our data, and it's all there versus having all that paper distributed and then they take it home and who knows where it ends up. So that, protecting the company and the data and how we share that is important as well.
Janet, why don't you introduce yourself? That was a really good point, but I want to make sure everybody knows who's putting in their 2 cents there.
Janet Johnson, I'm the assistant controller at Dryden, and I've helped Pete bring OnBoard along.
Excellent. Thank you.
So we've been trying to still work with Frank and Dr. Potter. I know you're still on. Would like to know, are any of you guys really leveraging the dashboard or the announcements to help kind of reduce the amount of email that you've been sending? Again, kind of reinforcing the one-stop central location of finding everything in OnBoard. Are there any unique ways that you're using? I know if we could hear Frank, we've got some great things in Ashley. But for Peter, for you or Dr. Potter, have you?
We have just begun to get those notifications and things. We're a little bit cautious because we've only had a couple of times meetings with our new system, but I think in the long run it's going to be very valuable. And so we're cautiously moving forward, but we're excited about it. We see the possibilities. I'll tell you why. When I became the new assistant superintendent, this was many years ago, I was the first person. This was in the days when school districts were getting one free computer from Apple. And that was the beginning of this whole revolution. And then my job was to go out and buy a little printer so that we could make badges and stuff for our big meetings. And I stopped by and learned about Macintosh. And it's a little tiny screen. It's about, I suppose, 10 inches across. But they could not only make badges, they were the next move. So I bought the first Macintosh in the entire school district. We have 22,000 students, by the way. And once my office got that, it wasn't but a matter of a couple of months till the entire district wanted those. But I said to my secretary, I will make you the expert in the entire district. You'll go to every conference and everything. So I have seen what has happened when you start something and it really goes well. I am kind of thinking the same about OnBoard. I can see a growth just like that. Mm-hmm. And remember, I wasn't afraid to do it. And now I'm retired, so I can say anything I want. So it works fine.
Well, I think that's important, right? You know, we work with a lot of different board groups and all different ages and spectrum in terms of technology familiarity. And some of it is just the willingness, you know, to take on these new challenges, you know, and keeping in mind that this is all with the goal of moving your business forward, right? Making the information more readily and easily accessible, where you know where it is, where everybody can stay up to date, on the same page. When you come to the meetings, everybody's looking at the same information and has hopefully looked at the information ahead of time. So while Frank's trying to dial in a little bit differently, I'd like to just share a quick story about Frank and Ashley at Scott Credit Union. Now, one of the things that I know, you know, Ashley, who works there with Frank, used to have to put together 2 separate board books, right? One for the executive committee and one for the board because of restricted information that they needed to control who saw what in their packets. So now with OnBoard, I know Ashley is able to just create one packet and then actually use the permissions. So even hearing some of those stories, you know, keeping everything in one place instead of having to manage 2 packets, I think not only is easier for managing the meeting materials, but on the receiving end, you know, you've got these different groups. Some need to have sensitive content. And so being able to manage that and have those levels of controls.
You will be seeing you, okay? Thank you. By the way, Yvonne has just joined us from Downey Credit Union.
Hi, Yvonne.
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm here with Mr. Potter, just sitting with him and listening.
Oh, awesome. Well, we appreciate you for that. Feel free to chime in if there's anything that you'd like to share on your side from preparing the packets. We definitely like to hear from the CEO and board members about you know, how they view OnBoard on their side, but we also know that you as an administrator and Janet and others, Ashley, you know, put a lot of work and time into this. So hopefully it's made your lives easier as well.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So let's we'll start to move into the next question here. What are some ways you envision leveraging OnBoard in the future beyond your current use? So outside, I mean, obviously, Doctor, you're kind of getting new with OnBoard here, but you mentioned already that you see other organizations that might benefit from this. And Peter, I know you rolled this out to the board well, but I mean, do you see this being used is there a possibility for like staff usage, or what else, you know, necessarily outside the box do you see that OnBoard can be utilized in your organizations?
Where I'd like to see it expanded, and it might be there. We looked a little bit about some of the electronic signatures, and some of that is that, you know, there's annual reports that have to be filled out by the board member. If we could, if we could present that to them, allow the electronic signature, and then, the archiving of those documents, that would be something that would be just a welcomed. We did look at a little bit, but the current system was a little cumbersome, but I think that there's some ideas in the works of making that a little more mainstream and easier to use. Janet, you have anything?
No.
We did voting. They don't really use that.
Not yet.
So.
Yeah, I think we would like to expand on the voting, but with like people commenting back and forth, we haven't kind of figured all of that out and how we can get that to be efficient.
Right.
Fair enough.
Now, I want to kind of pause and ask if any of our attendees have questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got one so far from Linda. Do board members meet in the same physical room and open their onboard application, or does the board meeting happen in a webinar type environment? And is it a way to bring people together that are geographically separated?
Excellent question. Peter, what's your experience? Do you have face-to-face meetings using OnBoard with people with their device, or do you have remote users?
We usually have someone remote, more commonly in the committee meetings, but during the winter months, 2 of our board members go down to Florida, and we've actually had a little bit of technical challenges today, but in general, we've updated our audio-visual. So with them signing in at home, they follow along fine. I don't see any hindrance of having them do it remotely, and I think it's easier to follow.
And they have all the updated documents, so there's no like trying to mail them something ahead of time and getting it. They have it at their fingertips.
Here in Downey, we meet face to face, but almost always there's one board member. We have some people that are, pretty high class. One guy has a jet plane, so he's not always local, but he'll call us from some faraway place like Texas or something. But he can do the same with his OnBoard, so that works. And we almost always have one person that is away from us, but they call in on the same speaker system that we're talking on, and they have their computer sitting in front of them, and they can respond. Now, we're in the process. We have a smaller district, a smaller credit union that wants to be absorbed by us, which is interesting. Now, they're very small, but they have a field of membership that covers almost 3 different complete city areas, and it will vastly improve our field of membership. So this OnBoard would be a great way, because the little board will still exist, but will be kind of subservient to us, I guess. There's no other way to put it. And we will work together with them. And the OnBoard is a perfect way to keep in contact, et cetera. So I think that in the future, this may be a great way to go. And we're also looking at opening another office, which is in South Downey for us, which is an area that there are very few banks there, or there are no credit unions or anything. And we're looking at moving right next door to a big hamburger place that's the most famous place in all Southern California. So we might find that the OnBoard is our perfect connection to everybody. It's got a lot of possibilities.
Thanks for sharing.
And good
that.
hamburgers.
It is a lunch hour.
Here's a lunch hour. I love that, Yvonne.
There's some pretty mean burger joints here in Lafayette, I'll have you know.
We did have, we do?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So from Alicia Jones out in Alaska. Hi, Alicia, it's Jesse. In general, do other users experience lag time with items appearing in OnBoard? For example, when board members access approval screen, it can take 5 to 10 minutes for approvals to show up. Hey, Alicia, I'll give you a call after this conversation and we'll figure out what's going on with you.
But yeah, so we want to know, this is an open forum for talking about things that are challenges as well. So I know unfortunately on our side, I know Frank and Ashley are doing everything that they can. So this is something that unfortunately we couldn't get them and get their volume on properly. But at Scott Credit Union, I'll just mention on behalf of Ashley and Frank that they've done the voting and with great success. I think Ashley told me that, you know, the first time they did an approval, she had to send out a reminder. So the last 2 times it went off without a hitch. So as Jesse said, we want to make sure that everybody's having, you know, a really good responsive experience with OnBoard. So we'll take a look at that. And then I think we did have another question about somebody asking about live training. So we're going to be talking about some other events that we have coming up, like our coffee hours, and then also some regional events. So we are hoping to come live in your area. So if you have interest, our customer advocacy manager, Janet Smith, is in the process of talking with CEOs. So if you're on the phone as a CEO, or you have your CEO who might be interested in talking to us about coming to your area and what types of topics, we would love to hear more about that. So we do live sessions and are looking to do more of those. So. And Tammy on the phone from Sound Credit Union just shared with everybody that when they had their February meeting, you know, they had people that couldn't come in face to face, so they went ahead and used OnBoard and coordinated their meeting remotely. So I know Tammy's working very heavily with her group for the annotation sharing piece. So Peter or Janet, is that something that you guys have used, or do you know if your board members are using the annotation tools, the markup tools?
Oh, well, good question. So we have experience using the annotation tool. So the problem that we had, and we've asked about this, is that we'll send out a draft, and if they annotate on the draft and then we update the document, like before the board meeting, they lose their annotations. So what we've done is we've inserted a couple of blank pages in amongst the information so that they can go there and make their notes, but it's not like it's directly on the certain pages, just so that they don't lose it if it gets updated before the board meeting. So that's one thing that we would like to, as an enhancement, is that those annotations are saved by the board members when they make those on the page, even when it gets updated.
So, because we have to provide a draft 10 days before the board meeting, which I don't think is uncommon. And
Right.
then we publish a new one, right? You know, usually we're waiting for data or some information, or maybe I'm just getting to something I should have done earlier. But when we update it, they lose their annotations, and you know, we wish that didn't happen.
Yeah, and you know, being an implementation manager and working with new groups, it's common when we talk about the annotations, right? So by default, all of those markups and highlights, those notes are private. And then of course, for groups that are on our packages that have the sharing option, when I talk to groups about revising their documents and things like that, so after you've published your meeting, some groups have chosen to go with an agenda section at the end of their board packet, maybe such as an amended section. And so rather than deleting documents that people may have made notes on, they'll just simply leave that version and then add any new versions at the bottom. So it also, if someone has printed the book or they've made notes about referencing a page number, it doesn't jumble up the page numbers. So that's just one thought. From a technical standpoint, if any of you guys have the technical expertise or have access to groups, I know that, you know, we've been trying to figure out a way to, you know, when you remove the document and the document is the thing that has annotations attached to it, how could you possibly retain those? So we'd have to figure out a different way to link those up. So we're always open to suggestions there. So we want to see if there are a few more questions, and we promised that we would not take up more than 45 minutes today. Does anybody else have any thoughts or questions for our panelists? It looks like we've got some different questions coming in. Some of them we're being able to answer offline. Go ahead.
Bottom line that we do in Downey is, particularly because we're new, we just use the KISS system. Keep it simple, stupid.
Love it.
The more complicated you get, the less involved some of our members will be. And the simplest, the cleanest, the easiest will keep us all going. But then again, I'm 80, so I don't have much time left. So it has to be simple for me. So.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And Frank did chime in on the chat. I just want to make note, he and I talked on the phone yesterday about this, and I appreciate, Frank, you reminding me that as many of you who are on board also are a multi-board member, right? So you sit on multiple boards, and with OnBoard, if you haven't been exposed to that, you can, when you log in, easily toggle between groups. So I know Frank is on multiple boards, and he was sharing with me how it makes it easy for him to quickly get to the information for his different organizations. Not only is there consistency, right, because they're using the same tools, but just through the same login. So if that's something that you're not aware of, we do get, quite a bit of referrals and groups that are on multiple boards. So keep that in mind, that we try to make OnBoard work really well for this multi-board type of situation. So thanks, Frank, for sharing that. So we are recording this. We're gonna send this out to everybody. And one thing before we go, just to jump back to our agenda, I want to mention that we do have our coffee hour coming up. This is our first event on Thursday, March 21st with Nathan Deno, who is part of our product management team. He's a director and product manager. And so for those of you who would like to join on that session, it'll just be a short 30 minutes, and he'll be answering questions and sharing with you about our discovery process for preparing for new product releases, and you'll be able to give some input. So
what time is that?
That is also at 2 p.m. Eastern. So for you in California, we'll have to do a little, for people in
11 o'clock. It's 11 o'clock here.
It is, I know. Yeah, so thank you guys so much. Yeah.
Jenny, do we have to let you know, or RSVP, or are you going to send something out, or do I just let you know I'm interested in attending, or interested in calling in?
Yeah, so we, that's a good point, because hopefully you guys are on our list to get our monthly update. So yesterday an email went out. Yvonne, check on that, but I'll make sure and get the link. But we do send out every month. Yeah, we send out every month an update that has things that are coming up, things that have recently occurred, where we're going to be at conferences. And so our coffee hour is on that monthly update. So you guys can search your inboxes for that, and we'll share more information after this with all of you about the coffee hour coming up. So thank you for attending. Thanks,
Jenny.
Thanks, Dr. Potter.
Before you quit,
yeah.
You are wonderful. You're the reason OnBoard works. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you joining us.
Hey, Peter, if you're back on the line still, you can feed my ego too.
Brian has been an exemplary ambassador to OnBoard. He's been available. He's been very accessible, and just even getting taking comments or some of these crazy things that we would like custom to our needs. Just very patient with us, and I think he is communicating some of them for enhancements in the future.
Thanks, Pete.
Well, there's a bottle in it for you, Pete. Thanks for the plug.
You guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us.